Welcome to the Underground.
Turn me up, bitch!
My Little Underground with Peter A.
Level 39 of My Little Underground. I'm Peter A, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. It's Peter_A. You can follow the show as well at MLU Pod. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and anywhere else you get podcasts. And today we have a special big talk going down. We have a co-founder of the 501c3 Ricky's Compass, and they're dedicated to breaking the stigma of mental health. We have one of the co-founders here, Alexis Thomas. What's up?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very important topic because I feel like, with mental health, it's something that's, discussed, but I feel like it's not like a major priority to some people individually because, we love to go to the doctor, right? When we have the sniffles. Well, I'm not saying that people go to the doctor when they have the sniffles, but you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, if you feel like a little sick physically, you go to the doctor. When you're vomiting uncontrollably, you go to the doctor, right? Hopefully no one's out there vomiting uncontrollably. But my point is that we go to the doctor for physical stuff, but not, when you're feeling, consistently down under, we don't do anything about it. At least for me sometimes, like if I'm feeling really upset sometimes, you don't think, maybe there's something, else that's not physical. You know what I mean? That you can't take a pill for.
Right.
So from what I understand about Ricky's Compass, you guys want to shatter the stigma.
Yes.
So what are some stigmas of mental health that you're trying to break?
So I think going off what you had mentioned, it's really important to note that like mental health, when we talk about mental health, a lot of times we automatically think of like the quote unquote crazy people that are sitting in a mental institution. But the thing is, everybody has mental health just like everybody has physical health. It's just that not everybody suffers from a mental illness, but that doesn't mean we should be working on the daily to kind of prevent anything from happening. So we really just want to shatter the stigma surrounding mental illness, and by doing that, we want to make it a common conversation. So we want people to feel comfortable to be able to just talk about how they're feeling and what's going on in their head, because unfortunately a lot of times like we live in a society where we ask somebody how they're doing and we don't want the full details. It's kind of like, oh, hey, how are you? Exactly. I'm fine, and move on. But in reality, we should be talking about how we're feeling on the daily, because we live in a very stressful, crazy society. And so we want to be able to normalize that conversation and just make it normal to talk about how we're feeling, and to also talk about like if you are seeking help, you don't have to be embarrassed by that. It's okay to see a therapist, a psychiatrist. It's okay to go talk to a counselor. That's important. So we just want to make those conversations normal, and we want people to feel comfortable talking about how they're feeling and the struggles going on in their own head. Because when you don't talk about it, that's when the issues arise. And that's when, when you're constantly trying to cover things up, that's when you have a problem, because the bigger hole you dig and you try and cover it up and hide your feelings, that's when kind of things explode, because it's just a big weight on your shoulders that you're holding on to. And eventually you have to let go of that before it completely crushes you. I don't know if that fully answered your question.
No, that's good. Is there any kind of specific instances where there's a sort of, I guess, stigma for mental health that you've seen? Like, I guess crazy, the word crazy.
Yes.
How many times I know the word crazy is used a lot in my vernacular. Sometimes, we're joking or, we're being serious, because that's like the only way you can describe someone who's kind of like, not all there. You know what I mean? There's something wrong there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if anybody approaches you and they do something strange, you're like, oh, that person's crazy. So where do we kind of, I don't know if we're not going to have all the answers, but where do we kind of draw the line when using the word crazy? Like, okay, this person is just like a terrible person because they do these weird things, or and where do we kind of like, okay, this person probably needs some help.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's important to just be cautious of how we say things and what we say, because I find myself making that mistake all the time too. Even like in high school, it's like, you're stressed out. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. Like, that's not something to joke about, but we use it all so often because it's just kind of normalized. And so even with, with the word crazy, I think it's just important to be cautious and be aware of others, and you don't have to label them. Like, when you're with friends and you're joking around, try and be cautious and try and slowly start to not use those types of words. So crazy, depressed, you can say you're upset, but are you really depressed? Because that is an illness as well. People face depression, and it's hard for them to kind of battle through that. But a lot of times when we put those words in our everyday vocabulary, we're kind of continuing to just look over the real struggles behind those words and behind people suffering. And so I think, we're not gonna leave here and no longer use crazy. Like, it's such a common word that I'm not saying that you can't use it at all, but you just have to be cautious of the way people are acting. And I think, when you see somebody struggling like that, especially if they're a friend, there's kind of 5 main signs of depression, and I would say like basic mental health issues. There's agitation. They kind of avoid self-care. I'm trying to remember all 5. But just hopelessness, and 2 others that I'm kind of forgetting right now. But you have to be aware of those signs. And I would say try and avoid calling people crazy in general. But when you see those specific symptoms that people are showing, that's when you kind of have to sit down and have a conversation with them and be like, listen, I'm noticing X, Y, and Z. Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can get some help for you. Let's see what we can do in order to, get you better. But I think in general, we just kind of have to try and avoid those certain words like crazy, like depressed, like, oh, I have such bad anxiety. Do you really, or are you nervous? Because nervous is normal. If you're nervous before a test, if you're nervous before a job interview, like, that's all normal. I was nervous coming here, but I wasn't going through anxiety, depression. Those are all prolonged periods of feeling nervous and an overwhelming feeling of nervousness. Like, that's when there's an issue. So when you start noticing people that are kind of going through those phases for a prolonged period of time, I think you need to avoid those buzzwords like crazy and depressed and stuff like that, and just sit down and have a conversation and point out why you feel that they may be exhibiting certain behaviors, and say, like, let's talk about this. What's going on?
So what classifies a mental illness?
So, wow, going right in. So a mental illness, it's a broad category. So it's more of a prolonged period of time for certain illnesses. I don't know, like, I can't explain the exact definition. My friend Giselle, she went to school for it, and she's the vice president of Ricky's Compass, so she would have been great. But a mental illness is just, wow, I feel like a mental illness is basically when you are experiencing a mental health crisis almost, but for a prolonged period of time. And there's so many different types of mental illnesses, so it's kind of hard to give like an overall definition for it. But yeah, it's when it can be brought on by certain situations that you're going through. It can be brought on by imbalances in your chemicals in your brain. So there's different ways that it can be brought on, but a mental illness is more so, just a prolonged period of a mental health crisis, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can kind of like compare it to something physical.
Yes.
Like, let's say you wake up one day and you're coughing, you're sneezing, some might say, oh, you have a cold. Right. But you don't have it's not systematic of a disease.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's not, you don't have cancer from sneezing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I guess, on the mental side, when you're feeling a little, down, or whatever,
Yeah.
and you're not feeling too great, mentally. You're not feeling very motivated to do anything. You just kind of feel like, I don't want to do anything today, and you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that is, I don't know if that it can classify as a mental illness,
right?
Because it's not, you're not. It's again the length of your feelings,
exactly.
Right? So I guess when some people might say like they're mentally ill, they might just have the blues, or maybe it's systematic of something else we don't know.
Right. No, absolutely. A lot of times mental illnesses are when, are prolonged periods of times.
Yeah.
So in order to be classified with depression, I believe it's like 3 weeks of severe, not even sadness. I guess that's a way to describe it. I'm trying to think of like synonyms instead of just saying, you're depressed, but it's a severe sadness and it's prolonged. So a lot of times mental illnesses, they are a prolonged period of extreme emotions, I guess you could say, but it depends on the illness too, because it's not always just like a lot of times when we talk about mental illness, we automatically think of depression and anxiety, but there's also schizophrenia, there's bipolar disorder, there's all different types. So it's hard to kind of hone in on certain symptoms when we're talking about mental illness as a whole, but it is a prolonged period of those symptoms. So like you were saying, when you have a cold, you might take some, I don't know, Advil, whatever. It could be allergies. So you don't really make a big deal out of it. But when you have a cold for like 3 weeks, like, okay, something's wrong. There's an underlying deeper issue there. When you're upset, when you're sad, when you're going through a really hard time, and, let's say you go through a breakup. Some people might get upset for a day, 2 days, a couple days, whatever. Some people, that breakup can trigger a deeper issue and it can trigger depression. So when, after those 3 weeks and it's like you're really not feeling any better, you're not going out, you're not being your old quote unquote normal self, then there's an underlying issue. Then it's like, okay, now it's time to let's go seek some help. Let's go to the doctors. Let's try and talk to somebody. Let's find a counselor. Let's see what the underlying issue is and see how we can help you with that and through that.
Because I've seen a lot, especially in pop culture, a lot of people are, coming clean with their mental illness. And it's usually like, I've struggled with mental illness.
Right.
But I never understood, like, what mental illness? Like, what are you going through?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I never really understood that. And I've asked some people, like, okay, you say you've struggled with mental illness, but what is it?
Yeah.
And sometimes they won't tell me. I'm like, I'm just trying to understand what it is. And I know bipolar disorder is one, schizophrenia, which I'm not really too sure about. I guess the stigma behind schizophrenia is like multiple personalities.
Right.
You know what I mean? Is there something I'm missing there? Is like, what is...
I think that kind of summarizes it. And honestly, on the way in, so Ricky Godoy, who is the reason that we created Ricky's Compass, he suffered from schizophrenia. Hold on, it's like hard to remember the exact wording. So it was schizophrenia, bipolar type, or schizophrenic. Yeah, bipolar type. Schizophrenia, bipolar type. Sorry. So I'm like trying to remember because there's a way of saying it that sometimes it's like, before we even really understood it, before I understood what he was diagnosed with, I was like, oh, okay, like he has schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, but it's one type of schizophrenia, basically. And so what he struggled with personally on his level was that he did hear voices. He did hear things. He heard people talking to him. At one point, I remember him telling me, and, we grew up in church together and all that. So we have that Christian faith, but he was telling me he was a prophet and all that kind of stuff. And, oh, yeah, these people are talking to me and stuff like that. And that was an underlying symptom of his schizophrenia. But a lot of times people dismissed it as he's crazy or he's, a religious freak or something like that. But that was something he struggled with. That was one of the symptoms of his schizophrenia disorder and diagnosis. So, yeah, a lot of times it is kind of like different personalities, but it's a lot of times it's the voices inside of your head, and you can't always figure out what is real and what's in your head. So there was actually, I took a mental health first aid class, and in order to kind of understand schizophrenia, they divided us up into groups, and basically there were 3 people in the group. And so let's say, 2 of us are sitting here, like you and I, having a conversation, and there was a third person standing next to one individual, and they were whispering in that person's ear. So let's say there's a third person here talking to me, whispering in my ear. But the thing is, we can walk away from that little demonstration, but people with schizophrenia can't. So basically, let's say, that person's here, we're having this conversation, and they're talking to me in my ear. You don't know what they're saying because they're whispering, but I hear it all. And a lot of times those comments, they're negative comments, they're just a lot of negativity, a lot of questions, whether they hate it's that own your internal thoughts, kind of just a lot of negative thoughts. And so it's hard to have a conversation, just you and I, if that person's whispering in my ear that whole time. And that's basically what people with schizophrenia are going through. Some individuals, each person has their own symptoms and stuff. But that was kind of a good demonstration for me to understand what Rick was going through. But yeah, there's so many different types of mental illnesses. And that means there's a lot of different symptoms, so sometimes it's hard to understand exactly what people are going through until you either, like you, talk to them about it or have experienced it for yourself. I think when people come out and talking about mental illness and their struggle, some people struggle with a mental health crisis. So I think it's 1 in 4, 1 in 5 American adults will face a mental health crisis in any given year. That's a lot of people. And so that might not be a full-blown mental illness, a full-blown, prolonged period of time where they're experiencing those symptoms, but they go through a period of struggles. But I think with celebrities coming out, it's good that they're talking about it, but sometimes they don't always give the details. So like you said, people question, well, what exactly are you struggling with? Because sometimes when they talk about it, it's easier for other people to be like, wow, there's somebody out there like me who experiences the same things that I'm going through.
Because it's not physical. You can't see nothing.
Exactly.
Your face doesn't turn blue when you're depressed. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We don't know what you're going through. So
right.
I guess in order for some people to relate to what you're going through, I think if you're going to put it out there publicly, at least explain what it is you're going through.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
right.
With anxiety, there's some people that really you just break down when put in certain situations, like celebrities that are very, very famous, like they can't deal with the fame, and that's very troubling too. But some people just get, like you said, get nervous before starting a new job,
right.
or they're going on a date for the first time and they don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's just the degrees of what you're feeling, to what extremity that you're feeling a certain situation, which may classify as, a disease of sorts.
Right.
And I think that's why I think therapy would, make a lot of sense. You know what I mean? Because I think if we take Tums what do people take Tums for again? Tums for what?
When your stomach is bothering you.
Okay, yeah.
Stomach issues.
Right.
Calm
So
your nerves.
you use Robitussin when you have a cough or something like that.
Right.
But I think when you're feeling a little, stressed, I think it's cool to talk to someone, When people tell me, and you might experience this too, when they tell me like, oh, I'm seeing a therapist, I'm like, okay, I don't want to know like what you're talking about. Like, why do you see a therapist? I just need someone to talk to.
Right.
And I think that's amazing, and I think we can all use that. But I think paying for it is like an issue. You know what I mean? Because
that's another thing that because we're so focused on physical health rather than mental health, and that's the society we live in, a lot of times people, insurance doesn't cover certain things. And I don't know, I know a little bit about insurance companies, but I don't know a ton. But I do know that's a big issue when it comes to mental health as well, because a lot of people aren't seeking treatment because they feel like, A, they can't afford it, because therapists and counselors are expensive. Like, let's be honest, they're pricey. And if insurance isn't covering for it, a lot of people don't, they can't pay $100 once a week to go talk to a therapist. Like, they don't have that kind of quote unquote like extra money, spending money. People, people are living, we have a society where people live paycheck to paycheck. They're trying to eat healthy, but that's expensive too. They're trying to take care of themselves. It all adds up. Unfortunately, there isn't a ton of help when it comes to insurance and that kind of thing with therapists. But there are a lot of therapists out there who will work with what you're able to do and provide, and they'll work with you to figure out whether or not, if you don't have insurance, how we can kind of finagle that and figure that out. And that's what's good about it. The only issue is a lot of people don't know about that. And so that's one thing that we as Zerkes Compass want to show and express is we want to shatter the stigma, but we also want to kind of highlight the resources that are available. So we've been working in our area, which is Morristown, New Jersey, and we've just been highlighting what's available and what's out there. So, Spanish-speaking therapists, there's a lot of Spanish speakers in the Morristown area that need somebody that will meet them where they are. They don't speak English or they're not fluent in English. That's fine. So we'll kind of highlight what's in the area, the local resources that will work with you, whether you need a Spanish speaker, whether you need somebody that, you don't have insurance and you want somebody that'll help you out in that area. So unfortunately, the whole healthcare debate doesn't always help when it comes to taking care of your mental health, but there are resources out there. It's just a matter of finding them and figuring out, where to go next, that kind of thing.
I think it comes up when there's a mass shooting. When there's a mass shooting,
Yes.
It's like, oh, we got to talk about mental health. But then when that news story kind of fades out and the news cycle continues, we don't talk about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that definitely needs to change. And I think about the Chris Rock sketch. Well, not really a sketch. It was part of a stand-up. When talking about the Columbine shootings, and he was like, because society blames things on, video games, music they're listening to, the movies they were watching, and Chris Rock said, whatever happens are crazy. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, it has nothing to do with, like, what you're watching or what you're listening to. There's something in your head, you know what I mean? There's something wrong with you, for the lack of a better term.
Right.
And I think we need to, as a society, kind of like work on that as well. Like when there's a pothole in the street, we cover it up, right? You know what I mean? I think our brains, we got to fix that too. You know what I mean?
100%. The brain is really the control center of your entire body. And, once again, I'm going back to like the society we live in. Everybody wants to look good on Instagram. We're going to go work out. There's fitness models. Who's eating good? I'm going to have a good vegan diet. Good for you. Nothing wrong with that. But why are we so focused on our physical health when everything comes back to your brain? And if you're not taking care of your brain, but you're going to take care of your body, then it's kind of pointless, in my opinion, because we're so focused on making sure that our bodies are good and are okay, and let's focus on what we eat and what we do and working out and all this stuff. But why not take preventative measures to make sure that your brain's okay too? Like, all health, it comes back to your mental health, because ultimately, if you're not okay mentally, a lot of times the symptoms do translate into physical symptoms. So if you're going through a really bad, if you're having a really bad period of anxiety or depression, a lot of times I knew somebody that his anxiety translated into him throwing up and not being able to, leave the house because he was in the bathroom throwing up. And that was his anxiety. And, it'll translate into severe headaches sometimes. Those are all physical symptoms of a mental issue. Not saying all those physical symptoms always mean that something is mentally wrong with you, but some people that struggle with those mental health issues do have physical symptoms. So it's like, why aren't we taking care of our brain in order to kind of be proactive and prevent things like that from happening? When we're so focused on our bodies, why aren't we focusing on our brain either? It's so important. And
heartbreak is a condition too.
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah. And a lot of times when kind of the onset of a mental illness. It can be a chemical imbalance, but it can also be caused by, outside sources. When you're watching TV and you're watching the news and it's constant negativity and, what mass tragedy happened today, that can cause severe depression too. Some people choose to not watch the news because they can't be focused on all these negative things going on in the world. It's important to stay aware, but you shouldn't be dwelling on that either. So, all those conditions can play a role in your mental health and all those things that you're doing. So it's just important to be like proactive and make sure you're kind of maintaining good mental health.
Just maintaining your
exactly.
yourself. I think that, let's say like I don't see a therapist, but whenever I feel like shit, there are things that I do that can kind of ease that pain. Like going for a run in the morning, putting some music on, having an outlet like having a podcast definitely helps ease a lot of stress, like a whole lot of stress. And that's not like a quick fix, but it's like, when you feel sick, you can either take, whatever medicine, or you can drink some ginger tea. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think we can do that for ourselves too. But the one thing I want to ask you, when can that turn into like leaning towards vices instead of like trying to go the healthy route of healing? You know what I mean?
Right. No, and honestly,
like
that's
drinking, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good question because a lot of psychiatrists view addiction as a mental illness. So a lot of times mental illnesses, there's oh my gosh, the word is blanking on me, but basically a lot of people with one mental illness tend to have multiple. So a lot of times if you're going through depression, anxiety is linked with that. If you're going through depression, addiction may be linked with that. But that's a really good question. It's important to maintain your mental health and notice when you're kind of slacking. So like if something's going on, it's so important to notice, okay, I feel a little off. Like you said, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to plan my next podcast. I'm going to drink some tea and relax and have just kind of a mental health day. Like those are important, but you have to be cautious. And I think if you notice yourself constantly, mental health days are good, but you can't just be, oh no, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit home and put a face mask on and watch TV because it's mental health day every day. No, it's good to have that once in a while, but that's also kind of
Are you projecting?
Excuse.
Are you telling me that's what you're doing?
Maybe. How'd you know? That's what my weekends are for. No, but even I notice I'll have there's some weekends where I like to kind of sit home and relax and just watch Netflix and drink tea and, do the face mask, whatever. But then I need a day where I'm actually doing something as well. Otherwise, I start to feel myself kind of fall into a hole okay, I did nothing. The weekend's over. I got nothing done. I sat around and did absolutely nothing. So, what's the point?
That depresses the shit out of me.
Yes. No, I agree.
To me a lot, especially when you get older. Mm-hmm. Usually when you're a kid or you're in high school or whatever, you feel like, oh, this weekend was great. I did nothing and it was great. But I've always felt that way because I've always thought about other people. What are other people doing right now? I'm sitting at home playing video games. Other people probably have jobs and whatever.
FOMO.
And I'm a loser. I'm just here, in solitude. What am I doing? I always thought I was not good enough. You know what I mean?
100%.
But I think as I grew older, maybe, you could speak to your experiences. I thought maybe I should stop comparing myself to other people. And it's easier said than done, but you have to find what's right for you and what's comfortable for you. And you have to kind of know when you're when you're not slacking off or when you're actually kind of helping yourself, because there's a lot of cleaning I need to do that I've been putting off. I've been putting off going to the dry cleaners for a long time. Right. And the stress kind of weighs down on you. Damn, I'm really worthless. Do you feel that way sometimes? Or?
Absolutely. I think comparison is the thief of all joy. And
the thief of all joy?
Yes. Comparison is the thief of all joy. It's a little bit of a scripture verse, so don't want to get preachy.
What
but
book?
I grew up in church, and yeah, that's a great question. Let's not go there. I'm not that good. No, I blank under pressure. No, but it's true though, and especially when we live in such like a social media driven world where everything is at our fingertips. Everything that people are doing, they're constantly posting, and you start seeing that, and you're like, wow, okay, my friends in Jamaica, my other friends in Texas, my other friends in Nashville. This person's at a Halloween party. This person is out shopping her life away. Like, and I'm literally
This person's getting married.
Exactly. This person's married. This person's having a baby, which is like everybody nowadays.
This person's celebrating their 3-year anniversry.
Yeah.
And you're a single, lonely loser. You know what I mean?
No, everybody, we have to remember that everybody goes through different stages of their life at different times. And so we can't compare ourselves to other people. But a lot of times we do because it's so easy to do that when everything's at our fingertips. We see everything. So I think we just have to try to stop comparing. And even if we put our phones away and just turn off social media for a day and just say like, you know, this is me. This is what I'm doing. If I need a day to just relax, it's fine. But if I feel, without looking at other people's crap, if I feel like I'm a worthless bum because I'm lounging around for so long, not because I'm missing out on something, but because I'm just not doing what I need to get done, then you kind of need to take a step back and be like, okay, well, how am I going to fix this tomorrow? What am I going to do? Or not even tomorrow, later today. Like, don't wait on it. But I think it's important not to compare because that is really what is driving a lot of kids to a depressed state. Maybe not full-blown depression, but a lot of times we're comparing ourselves to others and we only see their highlight reels. So, you know, we don't know what they're going through. We need to just focus on ourselves. That's really important because, you know, you don't want to just focus on the good parts of other people's lives when you're missing out on what's going on in your own life. And I think it's important to just focus, not necessarily on yourself completely, but in that moment, like you need to realize this is what I need to get done. This is the stage of my life that I'm in, and this is what I need to do. And that's fine, and move on and focus on that. Yeah, I think it's just kind of important to do that.
Yeah, I think social media is definitely like, because I was talking to a friend of mine and I was explaining the reason why I don't sign on to Facebook so much, because I see so many people oversharing, and it's just... It's like it's too much. I'm overstimulated. You know, I see 66 notifications. Just, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm clicking through it. I'm like, this person posted an update. I'm like, well, let me get off this because this is ridiculous. Somebody's outraged about something, and you just kind of feel like, damn, what now? Like, what else is the problem? You know what I mean? Because I've been watching the news. Like, there's so many things I have to be upset about. Here's another thing I have to be upset about, and it's just kind of overwhelming. And you just kind of you see these people are in a relationship, and this person is complaining about not being in a relationship, and memes, and it's just like, okay, let me just get off of this because I just can't do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think we need to just kind of just disconnect 100%. For a second.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe, you know, when you see people sharing on social media, does it kind of change your relationship with them? Not really change your relationship, like how you view them. Because I've seen certain people, they post a lot and it's about bullshit, and then they come off as obnoxious, and you kind of just don't want to talk to them for a while. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. No, 100%. I think social media, we're crossing this fine line between what's social media and what's reality, and kind of everything's mixing together nowadays. I think when I see people post about certain things, especially when like all they post are selfies or pictures of themselves and like, oh, look at me, and you know, I just got this like really nice outfit, I'm gonna go show it off, whatever. Like,
and they put
great.
An inspirational quote on the bottom.
Yes, it's like what's the point? No, that like it kind of irritates me. And then, you know, you see them in person, and I'm sorry, but you're kind of coming off as shallow. Like, I don't want to be around them and stuff. So I'm just learning to kind of distance myself from social media, but also, I don't know, just keep your circle close and small, and that's good.
Ding, ding, ding.
I think when you see stuff like that, like going back to just kind of social media and disconnecting, it's good because the whole maintaining mental health, like you're realizing that, okay, this is impacting me right now. It's impacting my emotions. It's impacting all of that. So I'm going to put it aside and I'm going to focus on myself. And I think that is so important because a lot of times when we are struggling, we're in such a fast-paced world that it's just like, okay, on to the next. Like, I don't have time to deal with this. But every once in a while, you need to realize, like, okay, I'm struggling. I'm going to put my phone aside. I'm going to put whatever I'm doing aside. I'm going to focus on myself, and I'm going to figure out a healthy outlet for you, you know, running, whatever. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take time for myself, and that's fine. And I'm going to get better. And then, you know, make sure it is a healthy outlet, because if it is something like going back to addiction, if it is something like drinking, I'm going to go out with my friends and I'm going to go out, have a couple of drinks, whatever, but you can't say no to the next drink. Well, then there's a bit of an issue, because now you're taking your emotions and it's kind of being transcribed into an unhealthy outlet. And that's when you have to be careful, because a lot of times, you know, people are depressed and they turn to drinks, and then drinks aren't enough and they turn to whatever. But you have to be careful. You have to figure out that healthy outlet. And I think the first step is just noticing that there's an issue and then figuring out how to better yourself and move on. And kind of, my friend actually posted this on Instagram the other day. She was posting on her story and she was just kind of like, when you start to notice that you're kind of hitting that downward spiral, that downward slope, like, what do you do? And one thing I noticed and other people pointed out was just like, well, it's important that you're noticing that, because then you're able to take the steps in the right direction. But a lot of people are just saying, you know, figuring out what's causing it, moving past that or you know, moving on, and just finding healthy outlets in order to make sure that you're okay, whether it be going to seek a counselor or just getting outside and going for a run or going out with your friends and having a cup of coffee and just talking. Like, those are all really good things. And just taking a moment off of social media and not comparing yourself to other people. It's all super important.
I remember having conversations with a friend of mine, and we were talking about how we need to, like, because, you know, I hang out with some people that love to go to shows and stuff like that. I love going to concerts, but, you know, we have to, like, not do that every day, because it's gonna fuck you up. Because if you're just always, like, out and about and not just resting, you're gonna drain yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I tried not to do that, because I used to go to shows a lot, like a couple times a week, and it's just too much. Driving into Brooklyn, driving way out in Long Island, and it's late, and I've been here since 7 p.m. It's 1 o'clock and there's still bands going on, and just like, God damn it. You know what I mean? Like, now if I go to a show, there's gotta be like 3 acts max, or 2 or 3 acts, because I can't. If you have like 14 people, like, nope. Doors open at 7. We're here till 2 a.m. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Nope. Ain't gonna happen. So I know Ricky's Compass kind of came together with the unfortunate passing of your friend Ricky. Did you want to start this because of his death, or were you always planning on a nonprofit for raising awareness for mental illness?
So when I was younger, I always my mom pointed this out, like, I always had a soft spot for people that were either like on the outside of the crowd for whatever reason, whether it was a physical disability or something else. Like, that always had a soft spot in my heart.
Church people are like that. Oh yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that it was always kind of in my heart, but I didn't really see it going on much further. It was like, if I could help somebody right then and there, I would, but I didn't see myself starting a nonprofit. And then in 2010, that was kind of my first close experience to suicide. Not me personally, but somebody I knew died by suicide. And it played a huge impact in my life and just in my town. It was devastating. And then come to, fast forward, I had heard about it, and, I had a distant relative that died by suicide and all this stuff. And mental health issues always ran in my family. And then when Ricky died on September 1st, 2017, that was probably the most devastating time in my life, because Ricky and I were very close, and he was like a big brother and a mentor to me. So for somebody that had such a promising future, and somebody that had such an impact, a positive impact in my life, I was like, if he's going through all of this and I didn't even realize how extreme it was because he constantly put his own issues aside and helped me through my issues, it's like, then what are other people going through? And so I kept reaching out to his sister and was just like, if there's anything I can do for you and your family, let me know. And so I didn't see myself starting a nonprofit. And she wanted to just kind of do an event in his honor. And we just kept talking, me, her, and another friend of ours. Kept talking, kept keeping in contact, and kept just reaching out to people to see how we could keep Ricky's legacy alive. And the next thing we know, we were meeting with this woman, Cindy, and she's like a life coach. And she goes, I see you guys doing so much more than just an event, just a one-time event in Ricky's honor. Like, I could see this becoming a big organization, you guys, nonprofit, whatever. And we're like, we're 3 college girls. We can't do that. Like, that's a lot of work. But we felt inspired. And so we just kept pushing through and figuring out the next step. And next thing we know, June 1st, 2018, we were officially a 501c3. We had our nonprofit status. So that was really awesome. But it was just, the whole thing was just like, let's commemorate Ricky. Let's keep his legacy alive because he was always helping other people. So how can we kind of continue that? And then it just spiraled from there. It was never like this is what we're going to do and this is our end goal and that's that. It was just day by day and, and here we are. That was it. It wasn't like a lifelong dream, but I'm so happy that we followed through with it because I always I don't like pointless things. Like, I like finding purpose in things, and there's a lot of pointless things I do throughout my life.
Oh, yeah.
But I think this gives me that sense of purpose and that sense of like, okay, I'm actually accomplishing something. I'm actually helping other people because I believe, my sense of purpose is helping other people. If I'm not helping somebody, then it's like, it's not as fulfilling to me. Like, it's cool, it's fun, it's great, whatever, but it's just not fulfilling to me. And this is where I find my fulfillment. And I know it was also a great outlet, a great means of coping for Melissa, Ricky's sister, and just all of us, really. It was really good for us to be able to get together and keep Rick's legacy alive and just help others while doing that.
So when applying for 501c3 status,
yes.
How does one go through that, and what are some challenges that you faced when doing that?
We were really blessed.
Huh.
So I actually have another friend who started one. He runs his own contracting company, and he is 26, I believe. Shout out to Mike Vinci. And so he started a nonprofit actually a couple months before us. He went through the process, and it was in order to help the less fortunate and with home improvements and that kind of things around the house. So he applied online through some website, LegalZoom or something. It was like an online lawyer that was helping him through the process because it's a lot of paperwork. Yeah. So he put in a lot of time and money into that. And when we figured out okay, maybe 501c3 status, maybe that's something we could accomplish, whatever, let's reach out to him. So we asked him about it and he gave us all the information. We were looking into it. At the same time, this woman, Elizabeth, who was a big sister for Ricky. She's incredible. We knew her through church, and her and her husband really took Rick under his wing throughout everything. And so we were talking to her, and we were kind of keeping her in the loop, and she always wanted to know what was going on. So she had actually helped other organizations get their nonprofit status, and she's very much an entrepreneur. She just wrote her own book, all this stuff. So she basically counseled us through the whole thing. So I remember Melissa and I went to her house one day, and she's like, okay, we're going to get it all done right here, right now. That's it. So she pulled out all the paperwork that she had from, other companies or organizations that she's worked on. So we went online and we applied online through nj.gov or something, paid the fees. It was a couple $100 here and there, and submitted all the paperwork. And I think a week later, a letter came in the mail, and Melissa didn't want to open it until we were all around, and it was June, so who was on vacation, whatever. And so we opened it, and sure enough, we had our 501c3 status approved. So again, we were really blessed, and we felt like that was just a sign of like, okay, we're on the right track. Like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. But it can be very challenging. They have made it easier because you can apply online now. So there's not as much back and forth through the mail, which takes a lot of time. But it's just kind of like, I think it varies state by state. But I definitely suggest just doing your research, and don't be afraid to reach out to people that you know are inspiring or able to help you. Like, use the resources around you, because that was one thing. Like, I was always like, oh, I never want to make it seem like I'm using people. So I would always kind of keep to myself about things. But like, people want to help. So
know-it-all knows nothing.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. People want to help. So reach out and, ask for help, and that's okay, because look at us. Like, we literally received I think we applied, I'm pretty sure we were at her house June 1st, and the letter was dated like as of June 1st, we got our status. So we were pretty much like instantly. Yeah. And that's like, that doesn't happen. Like, that's unheard of. The government takes time with everything. So we got really lucky, and it was awesome, but she helped us through every step of the way, and it was just kind of an online process, so it was pretty quick and easy. But yeah, and then there's just like maintaining that, so you have to like file your taxes and all of that throughout the year, not throughout the year, the end of the year, but make sure you have all your codes and guidelines and all that. So, but don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. It's it's as simple. I guess you could say it's simple as that, but
yep.
Yeah.
Well, like the Depeche said, reach out and touch faith. You know what I mean?
100%.
But I want to talk about some of your relationships that you've had with some of the organizations and a lot of community members and law enforcement, etc. You built a rapport with the Mental Health Association of Essex and Morris County, right?
Yes.
So how did that come to fruition?
So that happened. Let's see. So I actually, shortly after Ricky died, I was looking online, and they offered these mental health first aid classes. So it's kind of like CPR, but it's for somebody who's experiencing a crisis. So you can kind of figure out, whether or not they're experiencing a crisis and how to kind of divert the situation, and then get the proper authorities, law enforcement, whoever, there on the scene. So I took that class shortly after Rick died, maybe like a month or two. And then it was hosted by the Mental Health Association. And then we were meeting with this woman, Cindy, this like life coach. I forget how we met her. Actually, I believe Morris County, which is the county I'm in New Jersey, they have this, they're stigma-free, so they have these stigma-free meetings that we happen to find out about. And this woman, Cindy, was there, along with different organizations were represented as well. And so then that was how Cindy and I met. So I had knew about MHA through this class that I took, and then I met Cindy at this place. And so she was like, I would love to connect with you and all this stuff. So we were reaching out to her, and we were connecting with her, and I think we met for lunch or something. And I believe she was the one that linked us up with these people from MHA of Essex and Morris. And I basically said, hey, I think that she had a connection there. And I was like, I think there's, different, her whole thing was a faith liaison. So she was reaching out to local churches in order to get them kind of certified in mental health first aid, that kind of thing. And I had mentioned my church. And so she was like, oh, that's awesome, whatever. So she made that bridge, made that connection. And then I showed up to that class, even though I had already been certified. My mom was going, and I was like, let me just kind of see how they're doing it here. So I showed up, and these two people from MHA were teaching it, Tracy and Al. And they were talking, and my mom like loved Tracy. She really connected with her. So I ended up going up to them after the class that one day. And I was just talking to them, whatever, and I explained what we were doing and all this stuff, and we traded information. And they have been the most incredible people in the world. Like, we've sponsored 2 mental health first aid classes since then on our own, and they've taught both of them. Tracy responds all the time to my email. She'll check in with me. She knew I was going through a job situation, and she just reached out to see how that was going. She's so incredible. So if we have any questions about local resources, we would always reach out to her. And so they've really just been awesome to connect with, and our relationship just kind of stemmed from there. Just going out and, saying hello and say, like, this is what I want to do and you guys are doing this. How can we connect? How can we help each other out? And they've been huge helps ever since.
So what do you hope to get out of this connection?
With Tracy and Al.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, our goal is, like, if somebody reaches out to us and says, hey, we feel comfortable talking to you. This is what we're going through, or this is what, our friend's going through, whatever. Basically, our immediate person that we connect them with is Tracy. She's kind of like our go-to person because, she deals with counseling and all that stuff. And so she knows about all the local resources. So I think she's kind of like our, not backup person, but we're not mental health professionals. We can't counsel people. We can't diagnose people. We can't do anything. We just want to bridge the gap between, the people that need resources and the resources themselves. So our goal is to just be able to have that person, have Tracy there who will answer, who will help, who will connect the people. And that's what we do. So I've had multiple instances where somebody has reached out and it was, this girl's dad didn't speak English but wanted to really talk to somebody because he was really struggling. So I reached out to Tracy and I said, I don't think he had insurance and he obviously needed a Spanish-speaking counselor. And she was like, where is he located? Because Mental Health Association is a nationwide organization. And so she's, our local chapter. And so she was like, okay, here's who we know in the area. This is the resources we can offer. This person speaks Spanish. They don't need insurance. They can go here. And so she's just been a huge help with that. And there was another time where a friend reached out and it was for her friend's mom really struggling. And the friend of the friend didn't want to call the police because she thought, it would be bad for the mom and the mom would get locked up or whatever. But she was having a severe mental health crisis. And so little did she know, which I learned through the class that I took, was that if you call the cops and somebody is having a mental health crisis, make sure you ask for someone who is certified in mental health, whether it be mental health first aid, whatever, but ask for somebody because you want to make them aware so that they don't show up and see, this person acting crazy or whatever you want to say, and they come in with full force because they don't know what's going on. They're trying to protect themselves. This person doesn't realize what's going on. Like, they're not mentally there. So it's just it's people battling it out. So you want to warn the police, which we told her. But then I said, I will make sure that I reach out to Tracy and get her resources that she can use because she was based out of, I think, like Brooklyn or somewhere in New York. And, I'm a Jersey girl. I don't know all the resources. So I immediately emailed Tracy. Tracy responded within like 30 minutes and was like, here's all the resources we can offer in that area. This person would be great for her. Tell her if she needs to talk to me, if this girl wants to talk to me about her mom and how she can help her mom, give me a call. Here's my number. So it's just, she has helped in so many ways. And to be able to have that person who is, trained in mental health and mental health resources, it's so important. So she's been able to just kind of direct us to the proper resources.
I think that's incredible that you have these kind of relationships at your disposal at a local level. I think that's awesome. It's really cool.
Thank you.
But these mental health first aid classes, I've never heard of that. That's amazing. What are some of the things that goes on in these classes?
So basically, they split them up into either, I think, 3 days or 1 day. I took a 1 day class, Saturday class. It was, I think, 8 hours long. And basically,
whoa,
yeah, it's a little intense. They did offer breakfast and lunch, which was always a plus, but it's kind of just, for me, a lot of people that go there are kind of town officials or first aid people, so they can kind of fully understand it. But for me, it was a way to just understand what Ricky was going through because they teach a lot about the different types of mental illnesses. So you kind of
took those classes?
He didn't. Okay. Ricky did not. But for me, I went there and I was kind of like, what was Ricky going through? What was he experiencing with his schizophrenia, bipolar type? And so they teach a lot about the different types of mental illnesses and what those people experience to kind of break that barrier between people that are struggling and people who have never struggled. And then they also, there's this thing called algae, and it's basically the steps you go through if you see somebody that seems to be struggling. And ultimately what it boils down to is if you find yourself in a situation where somebody seems to be in a mental health crisis, meaning you think they're talking about suicide, whatever, you need to just be bold. And as hard as it is to ask the question, but you need to sit down and be like, listen, are you thinking about suicide? Do you have access to have you thought about a plan? Do you have access to it? Because if you're just bold, these people want somebody most of the time, like they want somebody to help them. It's a cry for help. So you need to just reach out, and it might be awkward. It probably is. Those are hard questions to ask, but they teach you how to forget about the awkwardness and just try and save a life. And so they just reinforce asking those questions. And if it seems like somebody is really experiencing like a suicidal moment, okay, this is what we're going to do. Make sure that they are in a safe area. Call the police, ask for somebody who is trained in mental health, and have them come and take care of the situation. But it's really just, the whole point is to save a life, just like CPR. If somebody can't breathe, if somebody's struggling, if cardiac arrest, whatever, you're going to jump in and you're going to save them. Well, this is kind of the same way, but they're just struggling in a different area. They're struggling with their brain. So it's just important to kind of understand the signs of somebody struggling, understand the symptoms of certain mental illnesses and just the illnesses in general, and then just how you can help when somebody is in a crisis. So they just really highlight all of that and help you to feel more comfortable with interacting with somebody who is struggling.
Looks like level 39 of My Little Underground is way too big of a talk to keep in one, so I gotta cut it in two. And to hear part 2 of My Little Underground, featuring a big talk with Ricky's Compass co-founder, Alexis Thomas, all you have to do is subscribe to My Little Underground anywhere you get podcasts. I don't care where it is. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever podcasts are available, I'm all there. It's Peter A. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's Peter_A. And follow the show as well at MLU Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right, part 2 is right around the corner. Don't go anywhere.